Dead grass at your feet, a rifle in your hand. Your friends lay around you, dead or dying. Burning, acrid smoke fills your nostrils and throat as you pant in exhaustion. The flavor of the smell of blood and iron settles on your tongue, and you realize that all is lost. You fill with rage at the loss of your friends, brothers in arms that you will never see again after today. Tears in the corners of your eyes, you raise your weapon and fire blindly through the smoke. The recoil wrenches the gun from your exhausted arms, and before you can pick it up, you see the flash of a gun barrel across the field. You hear a booming gunshot, and then... This is the description of an American Civil War battleground, and I experienced this for myself. Well, not exactly, but I experienced something very similar when I participated in a Civil War reenactment in May of 2013. However, I wasn't a soldier. I was just a message boy. My younger brother and I, plus 3 friends of ours, accompanied Miles McBath, who some of you may know, during one of his Civil War reenactments. We slept in Civil War-era tents the night before, prepared packets of gunpowder for the soldiers to use as blanks, and cooked bacon and eggs over an open fire. The experience as a whole was fantastic, but we were all freezing in our tents that night. My one day as a member of the Confederate Army gave me insight into many different cultures. First, I found out what it's like to be part of a brotherhood of soldiers, despite the fact that we weren't even real soldiers. I also noticed that even though we weren't really living in the 1800s, trying to act as though we were made us all behave slightly differently towards one another. And finally, I noticed that the actors seemed to have a culture of their own. They acted differently around each other than they did around other people. These cultures, when mixed together into one place, created the distinct environment that is the culture of the Civil War actor. From an interactionist perspective, the culture of the Civil War actor differed greatly from my own, but at the same time it really didn't seem that different. Allow me to explain. The sad truth about today's society is that technology has taken over our everyday lives. The biggest difference that I noticed between Civil War actor culture and my own is the lack of technology. Since we were trying to be authentic, the Civil War actors never pulled out a phone, tablet, or laptop while they were in costume, which was the entire time. Because of the lack of technology, we were forced to actually interact with one another. It's such a novel idea, I know, to actually speak to people you don't know. Anyways, the lack of technology brought us all closer together and allowed us to get to know each other in a way that we never would had there been phones in our hands the entire time. Since we were Americans pretending to be Americans, or rather, American actors pretending to be American soldiers, there really wasn't a language difference. However, there were many slang terms that the actors used throughout the entire experience. For example, they would refer to suspenders as braces and pants as trousers to sound more authentic and seem as though they really came straight out of the 1800s. Also, Miles told me that if someone's costume or actions weren't authentic enough, then they would be called a farb by the others. For example, if someone wore tennis shoes to a reenactment, or ate McDonald's fries, they would most definitely be called a farb. The very idea of reenacting wars is a cultural universal. People everywhere want to observe what's going on in the past, or what went on, and people everywhere want to be entertained. Reenacting battles and wars accomplishes both of these goals at once, and allows people to be reminded of what we've done in the past. People around the world participate in reenactments on a regular basis. On the other hand, the main informal norm that I noticed is the expectation that everyone be authentic in their acting, costume, and behavior throughout the entire experience. Like I already said, the reenactors have a derogatory term, farb, just for those who violate this norm. The main custom that I noticed while spending time with the Civil War actors was that everyone chips in to get everything done. One person would make the fire, while the others made up the tents. Someone would cook the food, and someone else would clean up the pans afterwards. Everyone worked together on different jobs to get everything done, and this made for a very efficient team. I suppose this was because we were a troop of soldiers, and I kind of liked it. Unless I was the one on KP duty, that is. KP stands for Kitchen Patrol and means you're washing the dishes. Trust me, washing greasy pants in cold river water is not fun. As for behavior, the Civil War actors definitely acted differently around each other than they did around other people. But this was mostly because they were in character the entire time. However, they also had inside jokes and references to past events that just came along with spending a lot of time with each other. For example, Miles told me that sometimes the actors became so immersed in a particular battle that they would see the real battle as it was, and they'd forget they're even acting in the first place. They call this phenomenon seeing the elephant, and discussing this experience with one another would definitely bring them together as a group. If you recall, at the beginning I mentioned that I'd be looking at this culture through an interactionist perspective. Allow me to sum up what I've observed through this viewpoint. Basically, I noticed that Civil War actors are very comfortable around each other, and there are many reasons for this. First of all, the lack of technology forced them to interact with one another. If someone pulled out a phone, they'd be called a fard for doing so. Speaking of which, the inside knowledge of slang terms that the Civil War actors used brought them all closer together as well. They would all work together to get everything done, and they'd spend a lot of time with each other since they were going from one event to the next. They shared inside jokes and experiences such as seeing the elephant. For these reasons, Civil War actors seem to have a culture of their own, and I very much enjoyed being a part of that culture. Thank you.
So today I'll be talking about military culture. I was in the Air Force from 1985 to 1989 and was a crew chief on B-52s. I'll be speaking to you today from the interactionist perspective. How is this culture different than my own? Well, military culture is much different than civilian culture. There's a sense of pride that is in the military that we often don't see in civilian culture. There's a respect for authority that also we don't see quite as much from in civilian life. How is the language or use of language different than our own? The language in the military can often be quite salty, you might say. There's a lot of cursing that goes on. There's a lot of slang that goes along with military culture as well. For example, in my position as a crew chief or mechanic on an airplane, we talked about FOD a lot. FOD is called foreign object damage. So if there was a rock or something on the tarmac or on the runway, as an engine would pass over that, it could pick up that rock and suck it into the engine and really do a lot of damage. There's written slang as well, like CANX. I really had no idea what that meant when I first went into my military experience, but that just means canceled, like if a flight is canceled. Are there cultural universals in military and civilian life? Yes, there are. Manifest functions, the things that are meant to be, things like protecting our country, learning skills, teamwork, leadership, all those things are very intertwined in military culture. And also we see that quite a bit in civilian culture as well. Some of the latent functions or non-intended consequences are relationships happen, personal direction. I know from my life, I really found a lot of direction in my life through my military experience. And really fighting for what we believe in. I think we do that as a country, whether you're a civilian or you're in the military. This is just a picture of the B-52, the kind of plane that I worked on and all its armament. This is not the exact plane that I worked on as a mechanic, but it's very similar to that. Formal and informal norms. In the military, you have what's called the UCMJ, or the Uniform Code for Military Justice. That's the law of the military. And when you do something wrong, then you are tried by the UCMJ. That's a formal norm. There's a respect for authority in the military. Things like saluting as an officer or somebody of higher rank is interacting with you or he goes by. That's something that you see all the time in the military. Even if a car drives by that has flags on it for, say, the colonel who's in charge of the base, you would salute that person, and that just shows that respectful authority. And then taking off your hat inside would be another example of that. Whenever you walk into a building, you would take your hat off out of respect. Some of the customs in the military would be rank having its privileges, and that's another slang term actually, RHIP, that rank has its privileges. As you move up in rank in the military, you have more privileges that come along with that. One of the things that you would never want to do is to abuse that authority, and that's another similarity that we have to civilian life as well, but it's really especially true in the military. How do people from this culture behave towards each other? There's some real positive things that happen in the military, like the camaraderie that happens, the building of a team or working towards the same kind of goals. It really starts off in basic training as they break you down individually but build you up as a team, and that experience really sticks with you throughout your whole military experience. And then there's a respect that happens, as I mentioned earlier, about like saluting. When you salute, it shows that respect for authority. Some of the negatives that happen is the competition that happens. There's a huge competition. I think when you get people who are working towards that same goal, that want to advance in their careers and things like that, that can really have that competition. And then for the males in the military, there's often a lot of that machoism or machismo that happens, that, you know, I'm going to be tougher than you, I'm going to be badder than you, I can take you on. That happens a lot. This is just a picture of me working on an engine on a B-52, probably 1987 or so.